This section of our Learning Together will help you learn ways to organize your classroom to promote early language and literacy development. In our classrooms, we can provide both the environment for language and literacy development, and we can also maximize opportunities for language and literacy development. Okay, so here we have a simple diagram of a book area, a library center in an early childhood classroom. And your library center may be one of the most important centers in your environment to maximize both resources and opportunities for language and literacy development. So what I want to do is examine each of these little areas and share some of the things that research has helped us understand make a difference, and also from the perspective of experience working with young children. So look at it carefully, and the first thing that I want you to notice is that there are lots of books. Books should not just be in the library center. Books should be in every center in your classroom. So for example, you could have books about building things in your block center. You could have nonfiction books in your science center. You could have cookbooks in your housekeeping center. Every center should be enriched with language and literacy. Now I want you to look at the open-faced bookshelf. That invites children to select a story, and that is where most often you will feature books about your current theme. Celebrating that theme continues to the bulletin board area, where here we have an author study on display. One of the things that I wanted to share with you, that an easy way to create effective bulletin boards is to take the dust cover, that extra cover over books, and you can staple them with kind of a bend in the spine so that you've got a three-dimensional display. You'll notice that in the puppet area, we have an opportunity to engage children and in dramatic play. They'll be using a lot of language, they'll be using a lot of the language of literacy, and later on when you create your own dramatic prop box for an assignment, this would be a really good place to store that. This is a pretty active area, so it's separated from the comfy reading spot illustrated here with a beanbag chair and a rug. And here you see children nestling in to read their stories. One of the things I did in my classroom was to have one of those little kiddie swimming pools, and there was a big beach umbrella, and there were sand chairs and beach towels, and that's where my kindergartners used to love to go to read their books. Now, look carefully at the listening center. It is so important. First of all, children get to hear different voices reading stories. So often homes and early childhood classrooms are dominated with those soft female voices. We can hear men reading stories in the listening center. Often CDs use sound effects that help children develop vocabulary by making the words come alive with sound effects. Now, when you're thinking about how you're going to have children use your centers, I think you should have centers that are have-tos, they have to go to, and then you should have centers that are choice centers. I would suggest that the listening center be a have-to once a week, and then they can go back and listen to the same story if they would like to. The library center should also be a have-to center on a daily basis. Another center that needs to be a have-to is the writing center, where children can go and experiment with different kinds of media, different kinds of writing instruments, different kinds of papers, different colored papers, different materials, so that they can grow in their emergent writing along with their emergent reading. I have some questions here that you can ask yourself as you critique your own library center. These are important considerations to make resources and opportunities easily available for young children. Let's talk a little bit about book selection. Earlier, we realized that the number of books in a home made a big difference in the child's readiness to come to school and continue growing into emergent literacy. So let's all try to reach that goal of at least 5 books per child. The books that you have in your classroom also need to vary in difficulty. So the Library Center should have books at all different reading levels. They should have books that you've read, that when you read a book out loud, it becomes almost blessed in your classroom, and children will want to read it on their own. They'll want to play school and pretend they're reading it to the animals that you have in your library center. And there should be repetitive books, counting books, class books that the children have made. Lots of different ranges in abilities so that every child has the opportunity to find something and stretch him or herself. Another thing that I want to point out is that it's really important to read nonfiction books to children and also to have nonfiction books available for children. If children only hear narratives, and we tend to do that in early childhood. Most of the stories that we read are narrative stories. If we limit children to only hearing narratives, they miss wonderful opportunities to learn how things develop, how things work in their worlds. The last thing I want to talk to is about why we use books within thematic themes. The number one way that children develop vocabulary after they come to school is through read-alouds. And so children learn a robust vocabulary, that depth of vocabulary. They learn vocabulary words best when the words are connected to one another. So if your theme is the desert, they're going to see the same key words often in the books that you read to them, the books in the listening center, and the books that they look at in the library center. Those key words need to be connected, and they need to hear and see them often, and they need to be words that are important for understanding the theme.